And we begin with the late, great Professor Dora Akunyili, who single-handedly revolutionized Nigeria's Food and Drug Regulatory Agency, NAFDAC. As head of the agency, Akunyili protected the health and well-being of millions who were being sickened and killed by contaminated water, expired food, and fake drugs. A woman in a man's world, she dealt with political maneuverings, death threats, and even an assassination attempt. And her fight against injustice has inspired a new book called I Am Because We Are, an African mother's fight for the soul of a nation, written by her daughter, Chidiogo Akunyili-Parr. The powerful and intimate memoir tells Dora's story and explains the African philosophy of Ubuntu, which translates to the title of her book, Ubuntu and the Importance of Taking Care of One Another. Chidiogo says was core to who her mother was and drove her mother to fight against injustice and corruption. And I'm glad to say that I'm joined now on the line from Toronto by Chidiogo Akunyili-Parr, the writer of that book and Dora Akunyili's daughter. So good to have you on the show.
And so good to be here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And we'd just like to go straight into this book and the memories that came into place that inspired you to actually pen down some of these very good stories about your mother. And some would even say you stretched further by bringing out those things that seem to be family-like that a lot of Nigerians shouldn't know, but you needed to tell about her so that, you know, her story will be complete in the public space. Can you tell us more about that inspiration?
First of all, you know, this story, in writing it, I really believe in the power of stories and that it's so important that we tell our stories. And what better story than this woman who inspired so much. And in telling her story, I didn't want to sort of tell a single story, as coined, as we know, by Chimamanda, of the NAFDAC woman, of the minister, of this powerful Amazon. I thought it's really important to tell the fullness of her story because I believe that within it is inspiration to know that we all carry that same light within ourselves when you understand that she's like you and I. And within that, there are parts of our stories that are not so pretty, not all, you know, all glory and shine. And that's exactly why it's important to humanize and connect with each other and how this is part of the journey and healing those parts that might not be as pleasant and how it strengthens the other parts of us and how we show up. So this book traces her life, the people before her, those that shape her, her grandparents, her great-grandparents, how she became the Dora that we all know. And within that, how we can find within ourselves our own path to being in our truth, to be true to our values, and to step into that power as she did.
Why did you choose to write this in the first-person narrative?
That's exactly true. So the book reads as if my mother, Dora, is telling you her story. This was a very, very critical and personal choice. It wasn't always the case. Initially, I was inspired to do that, but I shied away because I thought my mom's voice is very different from mine. The way she speaks, the way she writes, I do not want to spend the whole book imitating her. So I wrote the whole book in third person, but there was a distance between the reader and her. And I didn't want that distance to be there. I wanted you to feel the Dora that everyone carries in their hearts, not Chidiogo telling you about Dora. And that's what led me to really step into that initial calling. I went back and redid the whole thing. And I was like, yes, this is what this book wants to be. And the book is intimate in that way because she's talking to you from the beginning till the end. And I do come in. So one side of the book, one part is sharing her story. Another is me telling you of my mother. So there's those nuances. But the feedback so far is that exactly what people wanted to receive. Dora's voice, a resurrection story, one reader called it, speaking to us from beyond, inspiring, sharing, opening up about what was and what could be.
So you think this novel-like approach will actually send a deeper message about Professor Dora Akunyili?
Absolutely. I think in writing, she's written a book, My War Against Fake Drugs, and it's very dry and, fact-based. And storytelling is really about, getting to the heart of the people and hearing a story. So this is a story. This is a story from, everything from a little girl to a wife, to a mother, to a public servant, her pains, disappointments, her passion, and that, not to use that word, a novel is really saying it's drawing you in. And the feedback again is that people can't put the book down, and I'm really grateful for that, because it speaks to not only that power of storytelling that I mentioned, but the success of a story that can pull people into feeling like Dora is indeed speaking. And if I may, I do feel deeply within myself that I channeled this story, if I may use that word, because I spent many, many years just checking in on my mom, like, what do you want? What do you want me to say? What does this chapter need to be about? What am I missing? Who do I need to contact? And I trust in these connections that exist between us and those that have gone before us, between our ancestors, and definitely between me and my mother. And I just trusted in being quiet and tuning in and, always trusting that she was guiding me in the process, and that even though I'm the one wielding the pen, she was telling and is telling you her story.
Very interesting indeed. And I want you to go into the concept of Ubuntu, I am because we are. How did that really drive the story further? And I mean, you also talked about how she felt when you made your speech in the university then, and she, held on to that concept. What message are you trying to drive across globally about this very strong African woman that we're talking about here?
Something that you might remember hearing my mother saying is, I owe everything I am to Nigeria. She loved Nigeria deeply. So that love comes through in this book. And I am because we are was a title that when it came through, it was like, yes, this is the title I've been, seeking for and asking for years. The title came at the end, even though all throughout the book, that philosophy, that humanist philosophy that's from the Bantu language of Ubuntu, I am because you are because we are, speaking to our shared humanity. I felt deeply that that was something that my mother embodied. She was always about the we. She was about how can I serve the people. And in many ways, she learned that from her father before, and who learned it from those he came from. So this is even connecting us to greater we. We are not separate. We are not in our own individual I. Everybody matters. So at the core, this book is actually really continuing my mother's work of inviting us to knowing that truth, that we matter. And if you remember her campaign with the Minister of Information and Communication of I am because, of Nigeria, great people, great nation, rebranding campaign.
That was a message that actually resonated with a lot of Nigerians. And one very good thing about your mother is that she was never shy of, getting into controversies as long as it was for the benefit of Nigerians. I mean, she stood up to fight against fake drugs. When she was the minister, she had to stand there in the federal cabinet and actually speak the truth before her late former boss actually passed away, late President Umaru Musa Yar'Adua. Tell us about the courage of your mother when it comes to defending the interest of the public, especially that of Nigeria.
It was who she was, and it's who we are with our own selves. And perhaps that's to complete that last thought. That's the invitation to find the part of you that can step into that courage, that can step into how the country and your potential and your powers calling to you. So she did that fully, and that's the beauty of her life. She's someone who, against all odds, because she didn't have to become who she was. She didn't have to put herself on the line of a bullet, on the line of such for criticism when she spoke up again when Yar'Adua was ill, on the line of just so much insistent attack, working in NAFDAC day and night. not resting, dreaming, living NAFDAC. She didn't have to do any of that, but it was what was within, what was calling to her, what she knew was the truth of her life's purpose and what she wanted to contribute to the greater whole. So that courage does not come from nowhere. It came from the teachings of, I keep talking about those that come before, because the book is such a beautiful origin story of telling you about the people she learned from, her days in the village, how that shaped her. And if you look at the origin story, it's our origin story. Our modern history is not our full story of who we are. And, the people we come from are so rooted into caring for community, into stepping into truth, into speaking up, into calling people out when they don't do the right thing. She is rooted in that, and that shone through. So the invitation at the core is to remind us of that good people, great nation, so to say, and within that, rooted in that philosophy that we are interconnected and that we stepping into our own part in the whole is a critical part of our renaissance, so to say.
Very interesting submission you've got there. Have you finally released the book in Nigeria? Because I know it was meant to have been released in January. Another version said it may be in February for Nigeria. How can Nigerians actually get access to this book?
So important to me writing this book that Dora's story has to have a home in Nigeria. So the rights have been sold to Nigerian publisher Safari, and they are finalizing printing this week and next week. It's in bookstores around the country. If you're a bookseller, do reach out to Safari Limited. You can find them online, I'm sure, and make sure you get a copy. So you can get your copy as of coming week.
And have you thought of converting this into a movie? I mean, a lot of Nigerians who actually want to watch an action-packed movie featuring, Professor Dora Akunyili's life, travels, and challenges of nation building and all of that.
One step at a time, but that desire is deep within my soul. And even when I started writing the book, it's just like you're watching a movie. It's really incredible, the life that you lived, and so much of it Nigerians don't know. There's a lot to her story. There's tears, there's joy, there's deep sorrow, there's deep just mysticism and all of that. So I believe it's all the ingredients necessary for a movie. And I trust this. I've done my part. I've written this story. I've given everything to it. And it's now in the world. And the person who is meant to take it forward will show up. And I see that clearly in the horizon. And but something that maybe it's also good to mention is that I did record an audiobook, and it will be out in 2 weeks' time on Audible, etc.
Well, almost thank you so much, Chidiogo Akunyili-Parr, for this very great work that you've given to Nigerians. A lot of people actually praise you for pushing this narrative out, because they really need to know. Amazons like this who have sacrificed for the nation. Unfortunately, so many things have happened to your family, including the death of your dad last year. Our condolences to you and your family, and we can only wish you well. Thank you for joining us on the show. Yeah.
Let me add one last thing. Just that my father did read it and gave his blessings, and that means the world to me. So for that, I'm really grateful, and thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. So sorry about that.